Red button means we're live, a casual take with your boy Stephen Pepper, here to give a take off my chest. So last night, the Houston Rockets lost to the Oklahoma City Thunder, 111-96 in the in-season tournament semifinal in Vegas. And my takeaway from last night is, Houston, we have a problem, and it's Jalen Green one. You know, we're year 4 now into this guy, the former number 2 overall pick, and he's yet turned into a reliable star. He's still an efficient 20-point per game scorer, which is just not good. And to only have 12 points on 5 of 14 from the field and 1 for 8 from 3 on a night in Vegas where your team desperately needed you to hit some shots is really disappointing. But that's just the Jalen Green experience at this point, because it feels like he has 1 or 2 games like this a week. And it's concerning for a Rockets team that right now they're making all the correct steps that a team on the rise needs to make to go from a bad team to a mid team. And now they're at the playoff level. But I really think Jalen Green's going to hold him back for the next step, which is contention. Because this Rockets team, they're so elite on defense. I mean, they were smothering last night that they're in every game that they play. All they just ask Jalen's like, hey, can you hold down the perimeter shot creation? And he just can't. He is not nearly consistent enough to do so. It's like pregame, he flips a coin on whether or not he's going to be efficient or not. And more times than not, he is inefficient. Again, but that's just the Jalen Green experience. We've seen this for 4 years. And last year, I thought he was going to make that jump. Because remember in March, when Houston almost made it to the playoffs, where they won 11 games in a row, and Jalen Green was like going nuclear. I was riding this guy on FanDuel a lot on his overs. He was 20 points a game, 28 points a game on almost 50% shooting. And you're like, okay, is he going to continue this jump into next season, as so does the Houston team? And Houston has made the jump. They're a top seed in the Western Conference, but Jalen Green is more like the normal Jalen Green. Around 20-point per game scorers shooting 40%. This year's 19 points per game on 39%. That's just not good enough, which is concerning because when he's on fire, as we saw last year, he's a really good scorer. But when he's not, he's not. And this year, he had this huge game, if I can pull up his numbers, where it's like, oh my gosh, Jalen Green can hit a lot of threes. He can dunk. He can jump off the roof. 41 points against Philly in overtime. But then listen to the next couple of games. He has 9 points, back up to 28, but down 14. But back up to 31, but then down to 12, and then 12 again. Jalen Green's scoring output is like a violent roller coaster. And if you're Houston, I don't think this is a ride you should be on for much longer. Now, I don't think Houston has to make a move right at this moment. I think they should just, since they're so young, just ride it out into the playoffs and get experience. But sooner or later, if this Jalen Green thing continues, you might want to think about moving off him in the offseason for a more reliable star. Someone who you can really depend on to get buckets at an efficient pace. And they have the assets too, right? I'm watching Houston last night. I'm like, they got a lot of guys who are young, athletic, and cheap that aren't even playing right now. Reed Shepard, Cam Whitmore. They also have guys who are veterans that you can use as salary dumps, like Fred VanVleet and Steven Adams. And you could go out and get a guy. I hear people say Jimmy Butler. I would hesitate because he's 35, and I don't think Houston's ready for a player like that. But maybe in the offseason, it's Zach LaVine, Brandon Ingram. Who knows? We'll check back in on them in the summer because I still think they should just ride it out, get the playoff experience, let Jalen Green develop for a couple more months. But if this thing doesn't keep rising, I'd ship him. Because I thought the difference last night when I'm watching it is OKC, and that game, by the way, was really close to the final 5-6 minutes. But OKC separated because they got 2 guys that they can depend on to get a bucket. They just give them the ball, know they're going to hit shots. SGA and J-Dub, their spots, that mid-range, that step back. They're so smooth at it. Whereas Jalen Green, what is his go-to? He's not incredibly strong on the perimeter, and he's not that good of a shooter. And it also doesn't help that Fred VanVleet, his running mate, is also crazy inefficient. So if you're Houston, this Jalen Green thing is really concerning because you're making all the right steps right now that teams like Orlando, Minnesota 2 years ago, in recent years, young teams on the rise have made. To go from, after you moved off James Harden, you were a lottery team that collected a bunch of picks. And then last year, you were a mid team that was knocking on the door. And now you solidified yourself as one of the top teams in the Western Conference. But you got this guy who is leading your perimeter shot creation who's just not ready to. And if he continues to play like this, I would really consider moving off him because he's a problem right now. And I think if Houston gets to the playoffs, they're going to meet their inevitable fate, which is a first-round exit, because this guy is just not going to be able to hit big-time shots on a consistent level. But I appreciate everyone for tuning into this episode of A Casual Take. Follow my social media, stay updated on all things related to the show. Till next time, see ya.